Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. We're going to call this meeting to order, and next we will have our Pledge of Allegiance.
Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Tenemos audífonos e interpretación al español por si alguien gusta escuchar la presentación en español.
Okay, and headsets for the hearing impaired are available. Please indicate if you should need a headset. Okay. Yeah. I can go ahead. Okay. All right, so we had two items to report out for a closed session. Item B3, the board voted in closed session to ratify the settlement agreement in the case number 2019010-249 in the amount of $57,250. The motion was made by Ms. Ford and seconded by Dr. Reed. The vote was unanimous 4-0. It's 4-0 because Ms. Capps is ill tonight and so she won't be here. So just so you know what the unanimous vote will be. Thank you. The second item we did in closed session was B4. The board voted in closed session to approve the appointment of Jennifer Foster to fill the principal position at La Colina Junior High. The motion was made by Ms. Ford, seconded by Dr. Reed, and the vote was unanimous 4-0. That concludes this report out from closed session. Okay. Let's see. So next, we're going to have our superintendent's report.
I have three items to share with the board and the community. First, a moment of sadness regarding a student at Santa Barbara High School. The student's name was Arlene Wendy Hernandez. She passed away, I believe it was last week, and it was after a fairly long illness. And so the school had a moment of silence last week in her honor. And as we do at our school board meetings when we lose someone, a student, a parent, a community member, we always take a moment just to pause in silence. So please join me in that moment. Thank you. It's always tough for us as, I would say, parents and educators to lose a child, because that's not what we wish for in life. So our hearts go out to that family. Second, I wanted to share with the community that we held interviews for the principal of San Marcos High School today. It was in a very extensive process. It filled this room. We had 35 people on the panel, which isn't really an amazing process to incorporate that many staff and parents. And there was a very clear, unanimous recommendation from the panel to move forward. And so there's going to be a site visit to the location where the finalist currently works. That's going to happen tomorrow. 4 of us will go visit. And then Thursday morning, we are asking the school board to schedule a special board meeting on Thursday, 7:30 a.m., to consider that recommendation. The reason why we're accelerating this is these candidates, as we have learned, are applying across multiple locations and districts. And if we had waited until the April 2nd meeting because of spring break, we could lose our top candidate. And in this market, you don't want to lose your top candidate. You're going to hear from another principal appointment tonight, and the time to hire the best principals began in February and goes through about April. Once you get into April, May, the market changes. So just know that the process happened today. It led to a very conclusive outcome, and we look forward to the board considering that recommendation Thursday morning. And then third, we have the pleasure of welcoming Mr. Bradley Brock, who was appointed by the board last board meeting. And we have quite a few staff back there. I see them. Yeah, there they are. And this is the first chance for the board to meet Mr. Brock. We did pass along his letter to the staff, which I thought was just beautiful and elegant. I will share with the board and the community. After the interview with the panel process, I went down to Los Angeles to meet with Mr. Brock at his school. the school was closed on a Saturday, but it was just really, really important for me to see the context in which he's led and worked. I feel like we've landed someone who's going to lead La Cumbre Junior High into their next chapter. And I thought there was a really, it's a great moment today of the staff just receiving him, but also just sharing their experiences of Joanne Keynes as we hand the torch off. So welcome, Bradley, and invite you to just share some comments with the board, and welcome to your new school district.
First, I'd like to thank President Sims Moten and the board, as well as Superintendent Matsuwaka for providing me the opportunity to interview for this position. And I'd also like to thank Ms. Carey. Sean, where are you? Oh, there you are. Sorry. Okay. And of course, Dr. Becchio, who welcomed me during the interview process. And of course, I'd like to thank all of the La Cumbre community members and teachers and staff who are here in the audience. Thank you so much for welcoming me today. I really feel like I'm part of your family. Thank you. Thank you so much. I just wanted to share also a card. I got some cards of welcome from some students today, and I just wanted to share one that really I thought summed it up. Dear Bradley Brock, welcome to Santa Barbara. I know you will enjoy this beautiful city. We have great weather. We have a stunning beach. We have a very nice school as well. I know it will be weird changing schools and cities, but you can get through it. So these types of welcomes by the students and the staff were very, I think, just made me feel at ease as I am transitioning up here. I did want to just comment as well on the superintendent's advocacy and the board's advocacy for the performance-based interview process. Having just gone through that, and I know you went through it with the San Marcos principal today, I just want to say that it gave me an opportunity to learn about myself as a leader, and also to learn about the community. And I want to thank again the teachers, staff, and the leadership team for advocating for that type of interview process, because it does allow, and I can speak to this, it allows candidates to be able to be judged on their merits. And so I really do commend the district for advocating for that process. I just want to let you know, just briefly, that I've built my career as an educator in Los Angeles over 18 years. I'm building equitable learning opportunities for young people from diverse racial, cultural, ethnic, language, and gender groups. And my vision for education aligns with the district's priorities on equity for achievement, language access, and family engagement. And my background as a teacher and administrator, I think, aligns with this shared vision. And before I close in these remarks, I do want to again acknowledge the life and legacy of Joanne Keynes. It's come to my attention that many of the board members have known her for many years, as well as the community members. I realize that these are big shoes to fill, and I look forward to continuing to learn about her impact on the community, on the school, and I hope I can in some way honor that legacy and live up to it and build upon it, because I think together, all of us in the room, we can build upon that strong foundation that Joanne laid, and at the same time have a sense of shared commitment to one another in the future of our students' educational endeavor. So thank you very much.
Are there any comments from the board?
Well spoken. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well said. And I look forward to your leadership. And there are big shoes to fill, but from all that I've heard, it sounds like you'll ease into that step and through those shoes nicely. So welcome to the district, and look forward to working and collaborating with you.
Thank you, Dr. Reed.
Thank you. Yes, Ms. Ford.
I, too, am already quite impressed with you. I was a middle school principal for 10 years, and so I think there's no better job in the world, and you have a lot of staff out here who are obviously amazing. Clearly, you've already distinguished yourself as compassionate, empathetic, articulate, student-focused, and I love that. And fairly recently, I moved back to Santa Barbara, my hometown, from Los Angeles, and you are moving to a great city.
Thank you so much, Ms. Ford.
Yes, I just like to echo the comments of my board members, and I would like to say that you had me at pronouncing my name correctly, because it's either Moulton or Moultrin, but you were right on, so I'm
Okay,
already in your
wonderful.
favor. So welcome to Santa Barbara, and we look forward to working with you.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Moving on to our next item. Thank you so much.
Thank you again.
Okay.
Thank you.
So next is our student board report. Our students, they're coming to the podium. Do we have a student report tonight? Maybe we just have a standing item. Okay. Miss Carey's going to explain, right? Oh, new mics.
I'm sorry if that went through, but we have a reschedule of the
Okay.
La Cuesta Alta Vista Student Board Report, which we knew about last time, but probably just didn't translate through the document. So that will be upcoming.
Okay, awesome. We want to make sure that we always kept that up front, so appreciate that. Okay, so any board comments and correspondence you'd like to share?
We were, well, I'm going to share that Ms. Sims Moten and I were at the Dos Pueblos School Coffee with the Board. And did we talk about that last time? I don't think we did. So I'm going to
No,
just
we did
repeat
not, because we
myself.
were going to be
Okay,
meeting
good.
afterwards.
So anyway, it was a great turnout and a wonderful opportunity to meet with parents and talk about a lot of different things. One of the things that we learned was that they're really trying to, when you drive into DP, when you arrive at the school, it's really hard to figure out where the entrance is. Like, where do I go? So, and I did get lost, I'll tell you. In the beginning, now I know where I'm going, thankfully. But basically, it's difficult to see where things are. There's not signage. And what they had come up with, were sharing that they were going to come up with new signage and ways to ensure that people know where they're supposed to go. And it was really exciting to know they were bringing students involved in this whole collaboration. So I thought that was great news. And we talked a lot about just different programs that we had new teachers, actually, not teachers, parents, that had students that were still in junior high that were eager to find out what was going on at DP. And I thought that was really cool. And we had parents that had been there for a while and had students go through. And so we had a lot of cross dialogue that just the knowledge of having had students attend there and be able to actually answer the questions for those parents that they had. So I thought it was a real positive experience. Did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I would just add that it was positive in the way that the parents interacted to bring on the new parents and kind of, addressing their concerns as new freshmen coming into the high school. I also wanted to acknowledge the two teachers. I can't think of their names right now, and also Principal Woodard was really, integral in that conversation. It really was a conversation, and we learned so much. And I think one of the things that they also shared was their excitement about the new ethnic studies course and how many people are really enthusiastic about that. So that was really, really good news. So there's more to come on that, but I really enjoyed that conversation because it was conversational. They shared a lot of things with us, their concerns, and even solutions. I think one of the parents who was raised in England, and she was trying to think that we might need to use England as an example of how we do American education. That was an interesting conversation. But, to be followed up, and we certainly, and one of the other things was the parents thought, we can actually talk to the board, and we're like, yeah, you can actually talk to the board. So that was achieved in the fact that we're out there speaking to parents, and we want to be accessible to the parents. So that was a really winner on that piece. And we actually had our cards with us, and they, we all opened the invitation to come and, call us. And as we can get together, we certainly want to make sure that they know that we're available for them. So enjoyed that. Any other correspondence or board comments? Good. Okay, thank you. Now we'll move to public comments. Dr. Reed?
So we have 3 public comments, and we will call up Kate Connell, Paul Singer, and Kim Kotnick will come up in that order. We give you 3 minutes to speak, and we'll give you a 30-second warning, and the light will flash, and you will know that that's it. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kate Connell, and I have with me,
Kai Biswell.
and I am a Santa Barbara High School parent, DPHS alumni, and Executive Director of Truth in Recruitment. Kai is a Santa Barbara High School alumni. Truth in Recruitment's mission is to provide alternative options so that students can make educated choices about their future, to clarify the consequences of military careers, to inform families of their privacy rights, and to advocate for policies regulating recruiter presence on campuses. But our long-term goal is this: to make Santa Barbara the shining example of the best environment that school districts can provide for their students. Create a comprehensive and replicable success story. And Truth in Recruitment would like to continue to work with and support the SBUSD to institute an annual review of the recruiter policies implementation. And I'm going to get into a little bit of background. Our efforts began in 2011 when Santa Barbara High School students spoke out against the prevalence of military recruiters as guest speakers in classes and their casual presence on campus. In 2014, we worked with the school board to draft and implement a recruiter policy that regulated recruiter access to students. And the school board unanimously passed that in October 2014. The policy includes these guidelines. Recruiters are limited to 2 visits a year, no solicitation of student contact information directly from students, no simulated weapons displays, and a requirement that an opt-out form barring release of student directory information is distributed. So it's been about 5 years, almost this October, since the board passed the policy. And Truth in Recruitment has actively monitored the policy's implementation and enforcement in the schools and will continue to do so. We've worked with Assistant Superintendent Sean Carey as well as school board members. We've met with some of you informally. And all of you have expressed, I think, the concern that this policy is implemented correctly. Unfortunately, we've witnessed multiple violations of the policy by military recruiters, and we can provide records of that. We just experienced one. We were
30
at
seconds.
a career day at Santa Barbara High, where the Marines were collecting students' phone numbers. Here's what it says in the policy. E, implementation. Principals shall be directed to ensure the requirements of this exhibit are followed by all guidance, teaching, and security staff who might be in contact with recruiting representatives. Here's your part. I know I don't have much time, but the Board of Education shall annually review this exhibit's implementation. So I just think we believe that we can do this. It's pretty simple. By the staff compiling school data and having the assistant superintendent give a report annually in a designated
Thank
month
you.
at a school board meeting. So I hope that you can follow through on this. I have copies of the policy for anybody who wants it.
Thank you.
And I know that my time's up, but you only have 3 public comments. So I appreciate all of your work, but this needs to happen. Thank you.
Paul Singer, go ahead.
Good evening. So I was here a few weeks ago. Some of you may remember me speaking on the same topic today. I am a Washington elementary parent. I have 2 children there. One is in the 4th grade gate magnet. The other one was gate identified and entered the very large gate lottery and unfortunately is on the wait list. So the issue I'm here to address is the fact that there are something like 14 kids still on that wait list. And the parents at Washington have been brainstorming and working with teachers and working with the district to try to find a solution because the parents of these children, at least the Washington ones, generally don't think that the pull-out cluster style model is adequate. And so what we're we're really trying hard to get a second gate class set up, essentially, either at the Washington site or a different site. We think there's space, we think there's staff to do it, and I don't actually know what the board's role in this is. I would just ask that when it comes down to it, if the board is tasked with making any decision on funding or anything like that to open a second gate third grade class, that the board knows that this is the parent's preference, that it be a second class. We don't think it would require any additional teachers. We don't think it would require building any facilities. It might require some curriculum, but it's one classroom of books or of curriculum. We don't think it's prohibitive. So and just not to be just griping, the district has been working with us. And I do believe that they're trying to find a solution. I just want to make sure that the board knows that that's the direction we want to go. Okay, thank you.
Dr. Matsuoka and esteemed board members, my name is Kim Kotnick, and I'm also a parent at Washington Elementary School. I come here tonight to address two issues, that of principal support for large elementary schools and also equity in the GATE Magnet program for all interested students in our district. For principal support, I was asked to read a letter from Dr. Jill Hall, a fellow Washington parent and a PTO board member who's having surgery right now on the other side of our country. Quote, "We have in Christina the principal we want. Washington has had too many principal transitions and losses over the past few years. Our best bet is not to consider Christina's resignation as water under the bridge and try to solve our problems with a new hire. Under existing conditions, that new hire will face the same restrictions and challenges. It is my understanding that another elementary school principal has also recently resigned, largely for the same reasons. I want to do everything we can to keep Christina exactly where she is. There is no higher caliber hire to be made," end quote. And that's from Jill Hall. Washington and other large schools have urgent health and safety, discipline, and special education needs that can no longer be ignored or placed on a single person's shoulders, the principal. So we ask you to support the idea that assistant principals in some capacity could be provided to the large elementary schools, as additional psychologists are also needed to help with the IEP and special education caseload. Dr. Hall concluded her message sent to several board members and Dr. Matsuoka and Dr. Ramirez, offering to help the district find solutions for Washington and beyond using her PhD skills in economics and her budget analysis skills. So that's a real offer. My second topic is related to the GATE Magnet program. There are 14 kids who would love to be in that program, and right now they're being offered something that is not specific and hasn't been communicated and seems like it will be different than the actual GATE Magnet program. We would like to see those students, my daughter included, benefit from the same accelerated curriculum and the same cohort of similar learners that the district and the state of California say meets the need of GATE-identified students. Any GATE-identified kid
30 seconds.
who wants to be in a real GATE program should have that opportunity. And if there's something better than the magnet, then let's give that to all kids. If the magnet is the best option, then let's make that program available to everyone who qualifies and wants to participate. This isn't something that should cost more money. The district serves these same students, so we just need to organize them, adopt a correct curriculum, and move forward. And I'm sorry on some level for being here and taking everyone's time, but this issue is important, and I volunteer also my time and limited funds to help with any solution that is appropriate for our children. Thank you.
Thank you. Concludes our public comment.
Thank you. Next, we will move to item E, which is a public hearing regarding the waiver of Education Code Section 47635, 47632, 47605, and 47663, and the corresponding regulations. So the hearing is now open. We do have some requests to speak on this item. Helen Murdoch, followed by Karen McBride.
Good evening. So I'm Helen Murdoch. I'm a technology coach in the district and a social studies coach, but I'm also the chair of the negotiating team for the Santa Barbara Teachers Association. And I just want to say that I'm here to voice my support for both waivers that Meg is going to talk about regarding the Olive Grove Charter School that was approved by the State Board of Education. That's it.
Ms. McBride.
Good evening, President Sims Moten and members of the board and the Santa Barbara Unified staff. I too am here to speak in support of the waivers that SBUSD is undertaking in regards to the Olive Grove issues. My name's Karen McBride. I'm president of the Santa Barbara Teachers Association, which represents over 800 certificated unit members. And I just want to express on behalf of all of the leadership in our union that we support these waivers because we support keeping funding that comes from our local area in our local area to support the students in our district. Thank you.
Thank you. I do have a request to speak, but I don't have a name. So on this request, we have to speak on E1, F1, F2. Is that okay? Come on, step forward. Thank you.
Good evening, board members. My name is Ken Rivas. I'm a classified district employee, and I am also the vice president for the California School Employees Association, Chapter 37. And I'm here tonight to also in support on behalf of CSEA to and all its employees, members rather, that are district employees, in support for the resolutions and waiver regarding the items on your agenda, F1, articles or code sections 47635, 47632, 47605, 47663, and its corresponding.
Mr. Rivas, we're on the public hearing piece. I just want to make sure.
Okay, right.
So, okay.
Okay.
Just want to make sure.
Stating
we're good. Okay.
What we're here supportive.
Absolutely.
So thank you. If I spoke too much.
No, that's okay. Okay. Didn't hear any additional comments and/or so we can close this hearing. Mr. Che, you don't have any. You're good.
Well, I was just going to kind of explain
Sure.
the waivers, but in your packet, you got the PowerPoint, so I won't speak too much about this. But we have two requests coming up. One is to have a waiver to CDE in regards to possibly decreasing our in lieu of property taxes or eliminating them altogether for up to 2 years. And our second waiver is to, if they don't approve that, to go to another LCFF district that will take over our in lieu of property taxes, and therefore the state will backfill this LCFF district. So basically, at the very end of the day, the state will fund this charter school instead of the district. So those are the two waivers that we're requesting coming up.
Okay. So officially close the public hearing. So next, we'll move to our action agenda in our regular meeting.
Consent.
I'm sorry, with consent. Yes, we had to go back to that. Thank you. So are there any items from the consent agenda that the board members would like to pull? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second by Ms. Munoz. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, consent agenda passes. Now we'll move back over to our action agenda. Make sure, okay. So F1 is to adopt the resolution that Mr. Tay just spoke about, 2018-19-38, authorizing request for waiver of portions of Education Code sections 47635, 47632, 47605, and 47663, and the corresponding regulations regarding the transfer of lieu of property taxes to Olive Grove Charter School, Santa Barbara, from the State of Board Education pursuant to the Education Code section, a mouthful, 47635. Mr. Tay, do you have anything?
I don't really have anything to add, except that I hope you approve these waivers.
Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Ms. Ford?
Second?
Dr. Reed? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you.
Next, action agenda item F2, adopt resolution 21819-39, authorizing a request to the State Board of Education for designation of an alternative local educational agency to serve as the sponsoring local educational agency, as defined in the Education Code, section 47632, for Olive Grove Charter School, Santa Barbara. Mr. Tay? Comments? No comments? Okay.
No comment.
Okay. Do I hear a motion to approve the resolution?
So moved.
Ms. Ford?
I second.
Ms. Munoz? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion
Thank you.
passes. Thank you so much. Next, on the action agenda, F3, board action on student discipline. Dr. Reed?
Yes, in the case of 201819-27, I move to approve the stipulated agreement for full expulsion for one semester, which ends 2019.
Second.
Second. Ms. Ford? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you. The next, F4, positive certification of second interim financial report for fiscal year 2018-19. Mr. Tay?
Thank you very much. But before we get started, Ms. Ford, could you turn the lights on right behind you for over here? We don't have any lights.
Sure.
My eyes are not as good as they used to be. Oh, that's much better. Thank you. So I want to introduce Lacey Preston. She's the Director of Fiscal, and she will be presenting the multi-year projections and commenting, maybe adding comments about the second interim, answer questions. So the school districts are required by the state of California to annually produce a second interim using the state's format, which is the SAC software, which is the back part of your report. The second interim has a positive certification for the fiscal years 2018-19 and the two subsequent years, 19-20 and 2021. So I'm going to go through a little bit on the executive summary that the district is still projecting to deficit spend approximately $12 million. Staff has gone through as much as we can at this time and reduced the budget. And we also got our money from, or we will be getting our money from being backfilled due to the mud flow and the debris flow and the fire reduction of AV growth. And it also had added in the second interim, the in lieu of property taxes of $1.4 million from Olive Grove. So we pretty much stabilized from first interim to second interim, even with that huge increase. We reduced expenditures and then increased the revenue from the debris flow. The local property taxes, not much change. We won't get a new update until like in April. However, I have been in contact with the county because, as you remember, in 2017, we got almost $5 million at the end of the year because of their financial system. So I have confirmed with them that there will be no big surprises like that at the end of the year. Also, regarding the state funding, several of the reports that are coming out is the state is not doing as well as they projected in personal income tax. So I have a feeling that maybe in the May revise, the COLA may be reduced for 1920. So we'll keep you posted on that. The split on the legislative update, the split roll for property taxes is still expected to be on the board the ballot on 2020, and this basically reassesses the commercial buildings more at like every 3 years instead of just once when they turn over. We talked a lot about Assembly Bill 2808. That has kind of been put aside and has been replaced by AB 39, which you all passed in your consent item in support of increasing funding for districts. And along with that, you also approved AB 428. This says 420, typo. You were on the right one. Go up, Brian. Right there. So that's AB 428. And that is about the special education funding. And in this graph, we wanted to show you that, as you can see, the red line is our local contribution to special ed. The blue is the state, that has gone down, and the green is the federal funding, which has also gone down. So as our expenses are going up, our revenue is going down. And a lot of that has to do with not only the state controlling that money, but it also is the decrease in ADA, because we get revenue based on our total ADA, not our special ed ADA. So as we decline, our revenue declines. Our special education, next slide, Brian. Our special education budget is $34 million. And we get approximately, let's just round it up to $10 million. So we have an annual contribution of $24 million in special ed. You know, staff and I are very active in the coalition for getting, more money for LCFF districts and also special education funding. And this is just another way to view it, how it's really has stabilized and it's decreased a little bit, the funding, but the expense that we deal with in special ed is just horrific. And we need more funding from the state and the federal government. The next slide just shows what's happened in the past few years in funding for districts. As you remember, we went to LCFF in 13-14, and you can see the green bars are where we got our gap funding. So there's a lot of money being funded into the districts at this period of time, but now you look at this and we start to go down. And then you look at the costs of pensions and the costs of special ed, they outweigh what we're getting in revenue. So right off the bat, we need more money in districts. That's all we need. We need more money. That's all. So it's going to be tough to keep up with that, but the state's got to do something about this. Okay, so let's move on to the second interim. You're first looking at the unrestricted side of the budget, as we always do, and this is the revenue. And you can see some LCFF decrease, and that's the net effect of the in lieu of property taxes and the backfill from the state for the mud flow. Revenue, or the federal revenue is up a little bit. That's just because of MAW funding, and we only book it when we receive it because there's such a lag. And then we had some local revenue increase since the first interim. Moving on to the expenditures. Okay, so the net effect on these expenditures is, for the salaries, is about a $50,000, let's see, that is an increase, about a $50,000 increase if you group the certificated, classified, and the benefits together. So we're pretty right on the as we're tracking right on cue. Books and supplies. Now remember, we put a note down here because there was some confusion about what a negative meant, what a positive meant. And so if it's a positive, that means it's an increase in fund balance. So that's a good thing. So we put it as a positive. It's a decrease in fund balance. That means, or if it's a negative, it means it's a decrease in fund balance. So on your books and supplies, as you can see, we've reduced it, and we reduced it in services and operating expenditures, and this is where we usually end up low at the end of the year. People just don't, you think you're going to spend this much money on a contracted service, and you don't. You don't use them as much. You don't have, you always budget higher than you think you're going to need, or they're going to use. Capital outlay, there was just a decrease in capital outlay, and that's one of the reasons is that we reduced the carts that we were purchased, but no, we didn't need any carts, so we took that out of the budget. So that equals up to about a $521,000 decrease to our expenditures. One thing that I want to make on a point making in all other expenditures in object code 6,000 to 799, there is a comment, if you could go down, Brian, to right there, it says, middle of the paragraph, it says the decrease to capital outlay is due to the removal of the budget for the electric cart that will not be purchased this year and moving budget expenditures to the bond. That's an incorrect statement. We don't move expenditures to bonds from the general fund. It was from the deferred maintenance that we had budgeted in the general fund to the deferred maintenance account that we just opened. So I wanted to make that clear. I don't want the taxpayers to think that we're moving general fund expenditures into the bond fund. So I want to make that very clear that that is an error in our narrative. So then we get down to the unrestricted other finances and sources, and we had a decrease in our contribution, and that most of that contribution is a special ed contribution. There's some offsetting effects in there also, but that is an increase to our ending fund balance of $691,000. Okay, so second interim, we are projecting to have a $9.7 million ending fund balance on the unrestricted side. That's a decrease from the $22 million beginning fund balance. Okay, so we're deficit spending $12 million. Do I think that we're going to actually deficit $12 million? Probably not. We'll probably come up a little bit better because of the books and supplies people don't spend, or districts or sites don't spend as much as they think they're going to spend. However, I really do believe we will deficit spend. So we have to keep an eye out on our expenditures, or let's hope for more revenue. Okay, so this is just a graph that shows how we spend our money, and as you can see, almost 80% is salaries and benefits. That'll grow every time because of PERS and STRS. On the restricted side of the budget, if you have any questions, I know I'm going pretty quickly, but does anybody have any questions at this point?
Yeah, I didn't know if we were waiting till the end, or.
You can ask me anytime.
Okay.
Or if it's on, is it on the unrestricted side, or we want to talk
Right,
about-
right, yeah,
okay.
yeah, and I could go back to the other, but the idea, when you say we are going to have deficit spending, do you have a sense of what that would be, knowing that historically,
Well,
what has come forward?
historically, we haven't.
I
We've
mean,
been very close. Last year, we were almost deficit spend. We only came up a positive like 746,000, a surplus. So as you saw on that, on the chart that we saw, that the cost of special ed and the pension plans are outpacing the revenue. I'm hoping that when we get our second projection for this, for the property taxes, that it does grow a little bit. And you have to remember that when the state declared us basic aid, they took $1.7 million from property taxes. Now, I've also been in communication with CDE, and I'm asking them, well, if we're basic aid and we have charters, you can get some revenue out of the LCFF districts for any kid that goes to a charter school from an LCFF district. And they said, oh, but you're not basic aid. What? You declared us basic aid, now you're saying we're not basic aid. So at P2, what I'm starting to think is, oh, I'll be backfilled. So if we went under our entitlement, the state will backfill us for the property taxes. So I'm wondering when that's going to kick in, because it's kind of crazy how one day they say we are and the next day they say we're not. So that's a little frustrating for me about that. So with all that being said, I would really hate to venture a guess on that. But I will definitely eat my hat if we're not deficit spending.
So, Mr. Tate, I just have a question with regards to how does the deficit spending impact our, how much we enter into our reserve, or does it? Or
This
does it-
is all on the general general side of the general fund, 01. This has nothing to do with Fund 17. We still have Fund 17 sitting at $11 million. So we have a healthy Fund 17, and I was gonna get to that, but yes, you're absolutely
good to
right.
know. Okay.
This is just the general fund, 01.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Okay, so restricted side of the budget, we had a little bit of an increase in the revenue, and that was, we got some Title IV money of about $167,000. We also had a little increase in the federal programs, Title I, and a decrease to Title II, and an increase of Title IV, so that's about the net effect of that. We had, in other state revenue, we had a professional block grant of $80-some thousand. And then in other local, we had local, this is where all our a lot of our donations sit in this area right here. We went up by $239,000. So that could be a state donation, that could be a district donation, not a state donation, a site donation or a district donation. Next, please. Jump in anytime, Lacey, if you have any comments. So here you see that we went down quite a bit in funding our salaries. And this is because we had a lot of positions that were not filled. And so when we have positions that we don't fill, we usually have to hire someone as a contracted service to fill that position. So you'll see that we had a decrease in our salaries and benefits, but if you look at our service and operating, it went up. And it's about a $500,000 difference, but that's what happens. We were out with Sykes, where we can never fill the paraeducator position, which is in classified salaries. And with that coming, we start the year as saying, yeah, everybody's going to be on board, everybody's going to be here, we're going to fill all these positions. But as the year goes by, we don't fill those positions, so occasionally we move them out and put them into contracted services. So that was only a slight increase of about $81,000 overall on the restricted side of the budget. Our ending projected fund balance is the $1.3 million, and that will roll over until next year. And you'll see that probably that number come up on the adopted budget as the estimated actuals. But we will have our real ending fund balance presented to you about in this September. Okay, next. So this chart shows how where our revenues are coming, or our fund balance is made up of. The light purple is the special reserve, the white is restricted, and the dark purple is the unrestricted side of the budget. And you can see that in the two out years, we don't budget restricted money because we say we're going to spend everything we have on the kids that are in the school district now. So we will always budget that at zero. So we have a small restricted ending fund balance in 18-19 projected, but you can see most of our money right now is in the special reserve. It's almost 50-50. It's about 11 million to 9.7, so we're pretty close. But as we go in the out years, that general operating budget on the unrestricted side, it starts to go down. So, but we're still healthy. We still have the 11 million in the Fund 17. So I want to talk about this a little bit. So, there's always, when we get to Mr. Matsuoka's, what we call Mr. Matsuoka's multi-year, I want to point out, so I want you to recognize some of these numbers. So we started out on the second interim with a $22 million beginning balance. We're deficit spending $12.3 million, and that leaves us with a $9.7 million ending fund balance, projected ending fund balance. If you come down to the middle of the table, it has components of ending fund balance. So of that $9.7 million, what does that make up? Well, it's $2.8 million in mandated funds that we'll spend next year. We have $1.5 in lottery, and that equals $4.4 million. Then at the bottom, we have the 3% reserve, which is 5.3. So the 5.3 and the 4.4 equal the 9.7. Okay, so I just wanted to make sure that you understood that. Now, Brian, if you would go to page 33, I don't usually do this, but I wanted you all to see that actually in the SAC software, where you're also picking up these numbers. Page 33. There we go. Okay, go up then. Sorry. So you see on the far column, you see the 9.7. You'll see the 4 down at near the bottom. You'll see those two numbers, the 4.4 and the 5.3. So those are the ending assigned balances and the reserve for economic uncertainties. So those, I just wanted you to see that what you're approving really is this document, and the narrative just ties to the document. Okay. Okay, so as you can see, we're still decreasing in enrollment, and we continue to decrease until 24-25, and then we have a higher amount of kindergartners coming in at that point. So whether that materializes, I don't know. That's pretty far out there, but those are our estimates out to 24-25. Down at the bottom, their enrollment projection by grade span is there, and then we have a unduplicated pupil count projections also. Next page.
Mr. Che, before you go, can you go back to the enrollment? Those are some big changes, and if we were a revenue limit district, depending on our ADA for our income, that total enrollment line, we would be having very different conversations. We're fortunate that we live in Santa Barbara, where the property values have been hovering just below basic aid line, now cresting, getting ready to go above. If it weren't for that fact, we would be having some very challenging conversations, as other districts are facing across the state. And then you compound that with pension costs and all these things. But that's a pretty notable decline. If you go from 15, 16, 14,000 kids, 10 years out, is that 10 years out? 12,785, that's significant. So I just don't want us to miss that. I mean, in some settings, that would be really difficult news. But I think we also have to manage that as our schools sort of ebb and flow. We're seeing some growth in junior high, but it's gonna peak and it's gonna go down. So just know that come January every year, we have a standing Wednesday staffing meeting where we just analyze this to the classroom almost, because we want to spend our money accurately. We've got some great systems built by Brian Rouse and the team, so just don't ignore that every time. We just kind of zip by it, but that's. And here's the other thing: when's the birth rate in Santa Barbara going to climb back up? We don't know.
Well, that's kind of what I was saying in 24-25, that all of a sudden it jumps up to a positive 172 increase. So that's, that's from live births, projected live births. So how accurate that number is, it's too far out. But we are continuing to decline, and Mr. Matsuoka, I was about to call you doctor, Mr. Matsuoka is correct about the less students that are sitting in our seats, the more we go into basic aid. But we still want them to come to school and learn. So I'm going to turn this over to Lacey now. But one thing that I want to say before we move on is that, and I think I've already passed it, but there's another, I'm sorry, I missed what I wanted to say about, oh, it's way back there. I was going to say about the PERS and STIRS increases are outpacing our revenue percentages, and it states it pretty clearly on page 5. And again, the percentage increase from PERS and STIRS, that should have been added to that right there. It says percentage increase from 2018-19 to 2019-20 was 2.8. That's an increase in both STRS and PERS together. Then it goes to 3.67. And you can see that, you know, we're not outpacing the revenue. So, okay, Lacey.
Brian, can you jump to page 17? I'm going to be going over the multi-year projection. When we do this, we are tasked with projecting our revenue and expenditures for 2 years out. So when we prepared this multi-year projection, we assumed that property tax revenue is going to grow by 4%. So that is part of the number in line 3, and that's why you see that increasing. Line 5, other state revenue, we have removed the money that we've received from the state for one-time mandated funds, and that's why you see the decrease in this other state revenue. Down in expenditures, line 8 for salary and benefits, you see that increasing, and that is largely due to the PERS and STRS rates that Meg was just referencing. And this includes both the restricted and unrestricted side of the budget, and you can see down on line 14, that gives us the total ending balance for both the restricted and unrestricted side of the house. So breaking out the unrestricted ending fund balance, May kind of went over on line 17 how we have the assigned fund balance, and then we have the state recommended 3% reserve. On line 19, you'll see in the current year and the 2 outline years that we don't have an excess unrestricted fund balance. And that is partially due to, in the current year, the money that is sitting in the assigned fund balance and the deficit spending, and so that's why that's coming up as a negative. We are still meeting our 3% state recommended reserve because of Fund 17, which you then see starting on line 22. So although the general fund balance is decreasing, we are still maintaining our special reserve fund at 11 million. The next page details all of these changes that I just went over very quickly. Just want to point out in the expenditure changes, you'll see that we have incorporated 2 new assistant principals for the elementary schools. That's something that we would really like to do to help out those principals, as you heard in the public comments. So I'll just wrap this up by pointing out that all of this information is detailed on page 144 at the back in the SACS forms, like Meg was presenting earlier. It's actually broken out. You have unrestricted, restricted, and then combined, and the combined ties to the chart on page 17. So that's all I have, and we can open it up to any other questions.
I want to point one thing out, that if you go to page 148, sorry, Brian, to make you do this, when you look at the actual chart that we have to show in the multi-year projection, which is in the narrative, so this is the unrestricted and the restricted side. If you go down a little bit at the end, it gives percentages.
It's on page 149.
There we go. So see on column 1, which is the, it's actually the 18-19 school year, and then it goes 19-20 and 20-21. You see that it says it's 9.45%, whereas if you look at ours, we have 11.94%. The way the SACS, and I didn't want you to get confused in this because I know you look through this and check out all these numbers on these pages. But the reason why that's different is because when you assign a fund balance in the SACS software, it does not include it in the reserve amount. Because they're saying you're going to spend that, you can't let that fall to fund balance. So that's why there's a difference there. So I just didn't want you to, just thought we'd start educating you through on the SACS software a little bit here. So. Questions? Comments?
Questions, comments from the board? I'll just make a comment that I appreciate the second interim. I did realize through this that it wasn't a lot of change significantly, but I appreciate the tying to the SAC software and to the summary and those pieces that weren't always as clear as to how that, what we were proving on these reports, how they tie to your executive summary. And so I appreciated the short version of it in terms of if there wasn't significant changes between our first interim and our second interim, you know, in terms of that. And so I appreciate it. I don't know if you shorten it on purpose, but I appreciate the fact that it is shorter. And it just pointed out the things that were significant in terms of the changes that we need to be aware of. The one other question that I had, so with regards to our Fund 17, which is kind of balancing and keeping us through with all the, are we able to add to it as much? You know, just with all that, I know we've been adding to it over time, so I'm just wondering if we're able to add at the same level or it's been reduced because of other issues.
So if you notice on page 17, we did make a $2 million contribution. So remember that $12 million deficit is $2 million went to our savings account.
Okay, so that's good to know, 'cause I don't think that's that
good to know.
obvious.
And I mentioned that at first interim too, and I should have brought that back up, because that is an important part of the budget. But if you look over, the only thing that we have budgeted there is interest. So we have to, pardon me?
For next year.
For next year. So what we need to do is when we close in September, we need to find out what our fund balance looks like, and then we have to project what we can put into the reserve, if anything. I would think that's the way it would go.
And I just had one question about Olive Grove. So I know we're projecting. So would that change based on the waivers, should they be approved or?
That would be awesome.
Okay.
Yeah, that's 1.4 million. We have in this budget $1.4 million for Olive Grove. Depending on what happens, I don't know if they'll give us, because we've made 2 payments. And I don't know if that waiver, we're asking for it to go back to 18-19, but I don't know if they'll approve that for 18-19. So we just have to see.
Okay. Mr. Matsuoka?
Couple of trends looking at this sheet. If you look at line 13, so that's net income parentheses loss. So parentheses red is bad, black is good. And I'm consistent in my message. I keep looking for the inflection point of when our deficit spending finally hits. And it's been amazing that, you know, we start the year, it's looking challenging, and I think it's a reflection of a prior governor and a state budget where one-time money was the way Jerry Brown governed, and he just kept giving one-time allotments, and they would show up in the spring, and it would be good news to us, and it would help solve our issue. But, you know, Ms. Jate is, she's stated adamantly in our cabinet meetings, we are going to deficit spend. And I agree with her, it's going to happen, because I don't see any different news coming out of Sacramento or our local economy. You know, we have a new governor. I think he's trying to figure out his role. But that red number is going to stay a red number. What we have to pay attention to is how big is that red number. And then we're going to have to adjust and respond next year. So I'm already starting to think about the year 2021 from a long-term budgeting and negotiation standpoint. So I wish we had more money.
So,
Yes.
so
Dr. Reed?
so my question is, when do you think, I mean, if it continues this way, and when would we have to potentially dip into Fund 17?
I would say we're a full budget cycle away from that. I would say we're about, I think, 18 months from having to do that. But what I would say is we'll close the books out. We'll also get an estimate of property values, and I think that's going to trend positively. So I think when you see the adopted budget presented, we're going to have a much more accurate view of next year. We're getting pretty close to locked in on planning for next year. I'm going to comment about the elementary AP layer. We're getting close to reaching a conclusion on negotiations for next year. So all those decisions have set us up for next year. It's really starting to plan for the 2021 budget year. We need to watch, there's multiple issues, what goes on in Sacramento. This Olive Grove 1.4 million has become a significant deal to us. And then positively, how's the assessed valuation going to go? So just know that when we come back to you with the adopted budget, we're going to try and paint an accurate view of the next year. Because if it's, well, how much the deficit spending is, that's how much we need to begin to respond as, you know, the leaders of the district. Because we don't want to overdo that and set ourselves up for too much borrowing from the strategic fund, or worse, where we have to start cutting back on program. So let me speak to the elementary AP layer. We have talked to the board way back in November how essential that was. We've brought it to you through Friday letters. We've talked about it in cabinet. We see it as just one of the most critical, essential needs in our district. The public comment was well received. Dr. Ramirez and Ms. Loffridge and I, we had 40 parents at Washington who spoke to that. And so with your support, I see lots of head nods that this is embedded in the budget projection, that tomorrow we are going to post 2 elementary AP positions to be split among the large schools. And those are Washington, Adams, Roosevelt, and Franklin. So I appreciate your quiet support on this. We expect a pretty good pool inside of our district. And the other thing that we need this for is the training ground for future principals. Let's face it, in this market, we've got to start growing our own talent. And so we need that layer for that reason as well.
Any comments, board, before we take action on this item? Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the positive certification of the second interim financial report?
So moved.
Do I hear a second? Ms. Manus? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Tay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Lacey, thank you. Next agenda action item F5, recommendation of not to re-employ certificated employees. Dr. Becchio.
Thank you very much. Good evening, board members. I have before you tonight action item. We do have a reduction need in our after-school programming, and there is a 1.0 FTE that we would be reducing from a 225 calendar day to 185. This really speaks to the decreased need in the summer program. So that's what's before you tonight.
Ms. Ford?
No, I don't have a comment. I was going to make a motion to approve.
Oh, there you go. That sounds right to me. Okay, so your motion. Okay, second.
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
So moved.
Thank you.
Motion passes. Thank you. Okay, F6, approval of agreements for architectural services with Kruger, Benson, Zimmer, I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that correctly, Architects. Zimmer, okay. For portable replacement projects at Adams Elementary School.
Good evening, board. Superintendent Matsuoka. So I just put this on the action item to kind of make sure that it was clear about what we're doing here. So we've applied for state grant money for the kindergarten program for full-day kindergarten, and Adams School has a really big need. So there are 7 classrooms at Adams that are going to get replaced, and doing all of them at one time is a huge impact, not only for, interim housing, but for parking, and it's just a huge impact on the school. So what we're planning on doing is separating the 2 projects and doing the kindergarten first. We've already done our application to the state, and our input from our consultant is that it makes sense for us to do the kindergarten first as a separate project, so that the accounting on the grant side is much more clear, and it's less confusing, and it makes it easier for our process to get done. I'm having both of these items, both of these contracts on the agenda so that we can consider the entire impact at Adams before we start. Just knowing that we are going to have some areas where we need to consider with the principal and with the site how we roll these 2 out and what the timing's like for the second part of it. So that's what this is about, and I just wondered if you have any questions.
Didn't sound like we have any questions. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Right.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Okay, F8 request, did I miss it? No, F7. Approval of change order number 1 for Dos Pueblos High School Stadium turf and track replacement. Mr. Vizzolini.
Yes, this is the only change order for the Dos Pueblos High School field. It is essentially done. As you know, we're having a ribbon cutting on Thursday. There's a couple of very small punch list items, but basically the items on this change order were pretty much mandated. So we had storm drain systems underneath the field, we had water systems under the field, we had electrical conduit under the field that were all in bad condition, and we would have had to tear everything back out again to fix them if they fail in a year. So the idea was, let's do this now and be proactive. We have money in our contingency for the program, and I'm asking for your approval for the change order, and we'll close the job out.
Do I hear a motion to approve F7?
I so move.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Okay, now to F8, request for adoption of 2 secondary supplementary textbooks. Ms. Carey.
Good evening, President Sims-Moten and members of the board, Mr. Matsuoka, and members of cabinet. I'm bringing before you a request to approve 2 texts, and as it stipulates, supplementary textbooks. So these texts would be used in conjunction with other texts and instructional materials in these 2 spaces in our secondary system. One is for the International Baccalaureate program, which is hosted at Dos Pueblos High School. It's for IB French, and it's a digital text. The other is for the Career Technical Education pathway, the education pathway at San Marcos High School. And you'll see their child development is the course, and the title of the book is The Developing Child. This is actually a physical text that is currently in the superintendent's office for you and the public to review. I am open to any questions that you might have about these texts or anything related to that.
Board, any questions? Okay. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second?
I second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Right, thank you. And next is approval of a 1-year consulting and advocacy agreement with Capital Advisors Group, LLC. Don't know who's the staff. This
is me.
Jay. Okay.
So Capital Advisors are led by one of the top people in our industry, Kevin Gordon, and also, oh my gosh, I'm blanking. Jack O'Connell. Sorry, Jack. And we usually have a contract with them every year, and somehow we missed it this year. And so in discussion with him and our situation, in our situation with Olive Grove, we would like to have brought them back on board. So it says a 1-year contract, but it's a little bit more than 1 year. It's for the remaining amount of this year, and then it goes from 2019 to June of 2020. So I'm asking, they're going to really help us with some of the charter issues that are coming up for us, and so I would hope that you would agree to approve this for their assistance. They're really big on the legislative part, getting things moved.
Any board comments? Okay, have a motion. Ms. Ford, I see you got your pen over.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Tay. So board, how are we doing? We can continue. We're good? Okay. So we're going to keep on going.
Okay.
We're going to go to our reports and discussion, which is Adelante Preschool Franklin Facility Plan. Mr. Matsuoka.
I'll do this quickly, and then we'll move on to the Peabody report. So, Brian, why don't you jump off the screen, and I'm going to go to Google Maps. Board is not a super long narrative, but I think the visual of what we're trying to do is probably the best way to do this. All right, so the background on this, prior board and current board has received facility requests of our district probably 2 or 3 times. And so it was after the last one where I think the initial meeting was taken by Ms. Chate and myself, and we just met with a subset of their board and Executive Director David Batista. And so we went out to Adelante just to try to understand the need. And it was, here's the thing about walking the site. I mean, you could stare at this Google map all day, but it was that afternoon where I was waiting for the meeting, and I just was kind of peeking over the preschool fence and going, wow, that's a really big playground space. That's a really big space. And it started in motion, the idea that is now in front of you. So the chain of events is Parma. All right, we are here. So you can't tell that that's Trader Joe's. You're looking at the roof of it. Across the street, I'll try to move the cursor around. That is our Parma old preschool building. It is unusable. We were getting ready to demolish it. And then this Adelante question came up. So the proposal is to move the Franklin Preschool program, at least offices and 3-year-old services, to that property. It's 0.66 acres. It's plenty big to put a preschool facility. So the plan is to level the building and then build from scratch. The dollars for that are the money that was provided to Adelante in Measure J, $2 million, redirecting it to this site. Because then, and I want you to see how close it is. It would take you about 2 minutes to walk. It's really close. A couple streets over and you're there. The Franklin building, this white roof is about 5,000 square feet. It's a really nice building. I have now walked it 3 times. The last cycle was we walked it with Dr. Ramirez, Mr. Vizzolini, and the members of that working group. And we identified 3 classrooms that are ready to go. They'll have an office that they've never had. They'll have a little kitchen, all those things that a school should have. They also pick up a really nice kindergarten playground space. And so what we will also include in the future, the whole use, so that portable where the cursor is, that will be provided to them as a first grade classroom. Because then they can get kinder and first grade kind of really close around that playground. The benefit to Adelante, it was outlined in that table. They're going from 0.9 acres to, I think it's 2.4 acres. That's significant. It's still a small space, but it's significant. They're picking up a 5,000 square foot permanent building that honestly $2 million would not have been able to build that. So I think the cost benefit ratio for us is really good. And then we're able to move 2 classroom operations out of the Franklin. It's inside of this tile brick building out of there. And so then Franklin gets back 2 classrooms. So, I mean, the domino effect of all of this positively by taking advantage of Parma, coupling the Adelante facility dollars, new preschool. Adelante moves into the current preschool building, gets that whole playground space, and Franklin receives 2 classrooms. There's the plan. We've been waiting to share it with the board because we needed to work through some of the details with the Adelante staff, the Franklin staff, and then the preschool staff. So we've had conversations with all 3 groups, and so finally it's time to present this to you for really a first public viewing. We've kept the board informed, but we just wanted to share this for the public's benefit. And then there are some decisions that we're going to ask you even tonight and in the coming months. So questions, comments?
Ms. Ford?
Thanks. Is Adelante projecting increased enrollment?
So their current charter is capped at 290 students. They made, I would say, a soft to medium request for us to give them a little more space in terms of that enrollment number. Dr. Ramirez and I need to think of a mathematical algorithm that gives them the cushion they need, but also doesn't create a much larger program. Because one, the facility constraint is very real, but also it's a charter school and kids can come from outside of our attendance boundary, and that has a financial impact. And we have communicated that to them. I think we've got an algorithm that we'll be comfortable with. I want to make sure that Ms. Jate has a chance to review it. So it'll be a modest request, And you're going to see that in their charter renewal. We're going to give the board a first reading of it before we'd ask for your approval. And you know what, we can get that algorithm change out to you in a Friday letter just so you understand it.
Great.
Okay? Other questions?
Yes, my second question was, I may have read it too quickly, but it seemed like in the working group going forward, there was no one from Franklin on the group.
You know, it's mostly been just figuring out the details with the district and Adelante. I mean, Dr. Ramirez and I, we hosted a full staff meeting with Franklin, and we got an earful, I would say. Co-located schools are challenging. The preschool staff, we did have a separate meeting. I think what I would offer to your question is Dr. Ramirez has been a pretty constant conduit with Principal Kilgore. And then we did meet with their entire staff and just heard the history about this. I mean, this predates certainly he and I by many years. I'm looking at the board. Maybe Ms. Munoz was probably, I don't know, aware of it, but the Adelante charter moved from Cesar Chavez. It was Cesar Chavez. It was located.
Same place. Same place.
But before that, it was located, Boys and Girls Club. So they've just had a challenging journey on facilities. You know, they've been appreciative of this. I think it's a good step that will cover their needs for a while. And I want to connect this back to the dual language immersion report, where when we said we're going to start looking at 7th and 8th grade inside of our district, they very quickly, I would say, were grateful. And then they stepped back from a push to put 7th and 8th grade at that site. That would have been physically, I would say, almost impossible. Any other questions?
Dr. Reed?
Yeah, I just wanted to acknowledge the creative solutions, because I think you had to step out of the box and really look at this in a different way, and I think that is really important, because there was challenges in terms of Adelante and Franklin and the overlap and the size. And I know just traversing it, it's a challenge, you know, for teachers, for everyone. So I think it's great that you're able to come up with these creative solutions. And I guess my question would be, does everyone seem on similar, positive, same pages, I guess, relative to this new proposed plan?
I would represent this document as a tentative agreement between the district and the Adelante board represented by this working group. And we've stayed in constant contact with them and really have, I would say, co-constructed this. They know that this is being presented tonight. They have a board meeting next Monday, and so they're going to present this very document to their board and their parents and community.
And I just wanted to acknowledge also that I think it took co-construction to really move forward, and I think the willingness on both sides to negotiate that has been a benefit for, and will be a benefit for the students. And I think that's what we had to look to, really, is what is the best for our students in this situation. So I just want to say that I think moving forward, you know, hopefully this will really continue to build a relationship, and we'll be able to have some positive impact with these new changes.
Any
Ms.
other
Munoz.
questions?
Ms. Munoz. Ms. Munoz.
Sure. I'm familiar with, you know, where the preschool has been at Franklin, and I think that, you know, it's ideal for Adelante to be in the neighborhood, you know, the area there, access for the parents, and then also the preschool at Parma. I used to visit Parma before when it was a preschool years ago, and yeah, I think it's a creative solution, keeps it in the neighborhood and access. So I think it's perfect for the families.
And I would just add to that, we drafting or getting together a communication plan in terms of letting the public know what we're doing with this, and particularly our parents, and that, and how that may impact them. I think that's an important piece as we move forward.
Yes, I mean, the greatest impact is eventually on the preschool, but they're not going to move for 2.5 years, so we have time to communicate. Certainly Adelante, I think we'll work with them about a communication plan. I think that should be a joint statement. This is a pretty clear roadmap, and I think they can use it next Monday. The questions about timing, I mean, it is a long runway. So, but they understand that. I think getting the dual immersion 7th and 8th grade on the table quickly, it really helped them to see that this is going to meet their needs, I think, for a good 5 to 10 years. Now, they would like a better campus, but it's land, it's building. So would says Ms. Ford. If there's no other questions, I'd like to check in with the board. We would like to get KBZ under contract at the next board meeting for the preschool design, because that is the critical path step. So senior affirmations, we will bring a contract back and get that project in motion. You will see the charter renewal, and then followed at the subsequent meeting, a facility use agreement with Adelante in the spring. I put the dates in there, so we are working on that with them. Okay.
Hearing no further discussion on this item, we'll move to G2, update on the Santa Barbara High Peabody Stadium project. Mr. Vizzolini.
All right, Mr. Rouse, I kicked myself off, and you can run the screen again. I just want to acknowledge Mr. Vizzolini is here on his vacation. Thank you. Yay.
Thank you.
Good evening again, Board. This is an update on the Peabody Grandstand Replacement Project. Some major milestones to begin with. The major storm drain system that runs underneath that stadium is complete. Big part of the project. We've also gotten nearly all of the concrete work done, so there's all kinds of walkways and the retaining walls that are carved the hillside out to enable the track to be in there have been done. I've got a couple images for you. Here's the walls of the stadium being poured. So that work has been finished. This is structural steel. These are the main supports that will hold the seating. And this is another photo of showing decking going in. Oops, I'm sorry. All right. There you go. Thanks. Thank you. There we go. So this shows some decking going in between the seating rows and some more of the steel. This shows the architectural towers that will be up on top of the new stadium that are going to get lifted up there within the next couple of weeks. There have been some delays. Between the Thomas Fire and the debris flow, we had a significant impact to the schedule. We also had a major problem behind here that you can't see right now, but a subcontractor actually installed the temporary shoring that gave them room to make the retaining walls in the wrong location, and it had to be completely removed and built back. And so this was a 35-foot wall made out of timber, and they had to rebuild the whole slope back up and take it apart and work their way down to the bottom and then move it and then build their way back up. And that was like a 60-day project. The contractor did a pretty good job of trying to recover some of that. But the problem is we've seen a whole bunch of this. So I've got a couple of pictures here of rain. We've had so far almost 60 work days on a rain delay, which is close to 3 months of time. So when you start adding the rain delays, the shoring problem, and the Thomas Fire, we're very far behind. So there are some impacts. Graduation obviously will not be held here. So I do have a contract with the bowl sitting on my desk, so after this conversation, I'll have it at the next board meeting. The project will pay for it, so there won't be an impact to the school as far as having to have another graduation at the bowl. We're working with site staff and with the staff at the bowl to try and improve that experience. Last year, they had some problems with transportation. They had some problems with ADA parking. They had some timing problems where people didn't get there soon enough. So we've been working with the site, and they've got a bunch of messaging that they're waiting for this meeting, and now they're going to get it out to their their community, and they're working on making the Bowl parking lot ADA parking. They're going to give special passes for that so that they have people that need that service won't have to struggle from the street to get there and take a long time. We're also going to be using the Armory parking. We own it. We might as well use it for something, right? So one of our project managers, they actually came up with a great idea because the lots aren't in great condition and they're not striped. So we're looking into a valet service that's basically going to transport from the Armory to the Bowl and back. So we hope to make that experience a lot better off. The other obvious impact is the schedules have to be moved. So the new construction deadline, or excuse me, the completion date is in August. I'll have a change order next month at the April board meeting that has some cost impacts on discovery items, but it will also have that revised completion date, so the board can approve both of those things at the same time. Conclusion is a good one. It's about the only good news I have tonight for you is that we're under budget. So to date, we have just over $200,000 in change orders, and that represents 0.7% of our construction costs. So we're keeping the cost down low, and we're expecting it to stay that way. That's my report. I'm happy to answer questions.
Any questions from the board? Comments? Thank you, Mr. Vizzolini.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So we don't have any items to return. Coming events? Any coming events that we need to be aware of?
I'd like you to announce a special board meeting.
Yes. Yep. So, okay, yes, we want to remind ours that earlier Dr. Matsuoka mentioned the special board meeting that will be happening on March 15th at 7:30.
March
14th.
14th.
I have something to do on the 15th. So on March 14th at 7:30 a.m. here. Yes.
Here.
Any future agenda items? I still need that list, Dr. Reed. We're going to work on that, girl.
It's on the.
Is it on?
It's on the shared drive.
Okay. Now I know where it is. I'll look for that. Okay. So following our March 14th meeting, our next regular scheduled meeting will be Tuesday, April 2nd, 2019. And if there's no further discussion, do I have a motion to adjourn this meeting?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.